Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Lori Hoover, intuitive guide and psychic medium. Together, let's wake the fuck up. Today's guest is an LA-based conscious performance coach, consultant, speaker, and mind-body instructor with over 20 years of experience. He has traveled both nationally and internationally, speaking and educating on the physical, mental, and emotional aspects of wellness and life. He has also worked with and coached well-known companies such as Walt Disney, Enterprise Car Rental, Xerox, Lululemon, Christie's International Real Estate, Twitter, Explore.org, and more. My guest has mentored and consulted with celebrities, business executives, top fitness professionals, and military special ops personnel. He deals with the whole individual, fine-tuning their fitness program, nutrition, looking at what language they use to motivate themselves, finding out their why, whether or not their personal relationships are healthy, or if loving boundaries need to be put in place. He looks at their spiritual practice and even their relationship with money. By disrupting old patterns and identifying limiting beliefs, he guides his clients to achieving their goals through the process of falling in love with the journey of becoming the greatest version of themselves. Please welcome Chris Plourde to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. So I've got a lot of questions for you.
All right, I'm ready, I think.
All right. You know, Chris, so many of us fail to show up for ourselves, like over and over again. And although I understand that the specifics can and will look differently for each of us, why do you think that is? Like, what's at the core of us not doing what it takes to live the lives we actually want?
Yeah, well, I think it's old programming. You know, we've been programmed a certain way from our parents, our mentors, our uncles, our aunts, our loved ones. And they gave us an idea of what success or their success was. You know, a lot of them weren't necessarily happy or completely fulfilled, and they wanted us to be a better version of them. And so they gave us a lot of ideas, and a lot of those ideas were projections of what they didn't want or what they did want in life. And I think we took those on, and they didn't do it with any malice. They did the best job with the tools that they had. And we took that programming on, and a lot of that programming was developed probably by the time we were 20 or so. And we use those now to make decisions in our life. You know, we put others first, which is an admirable thing. I have kids, you know, I have a wife, I'm going to always put them first. But where I feel, you know, a lot of people neglect is that they don't look in the mirror. They stop doing what they love, following their joy. And a lot of that becomes resentful. They become disempowered. They lose their inner power. That one thing that brought themselves to this world, that brought them up, that gave them a sense of self, and they give it their power away. So there's a fine balance between, you know, being able to be in service and give, but also being able to give to yourself, that self-love aspect of it all.
Right. I say this all the time, probably ad nauseum, actually, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. You just can't. How can we shift our habits to make ourselves more of a priority so that the people in our lives get the overflow instead of the whole damned cup?
Well, that's amazing. You're right. And it's not to nauseam, it's repetition. It's just like working out, right? You have to do it every single day or a few times a week in order to get fitter, right? Physically. It's the same thing emotionally and emotionally fitter. You do it on a regular basis, you put the attention there. That's when you start to see the changes happen. And I ask my clients the same thing. I go, what is your cup? What is it on a scale of 1 to 10? How full is your cup? You know, they might have all the money in the world and their bank accounts are full, but you know, you really get to it and you ask them about all areas of their life, you know, including spiritually, personally, financially, physically, and they're going to get to a place and they usually say, I don't know, 5, 4, you know, and it's like, well, how much of you are you able to give if you're only at a 4, if you're at a 5? Like your best version of yourself So you're not playing all out. You're not being that best version. You're not giving your gifts that you need to give if you're not able to somehow fill that cup or plug that hole that's draining you. And it's looking at where can we put up loving boundaries? Where can we put in habits that are going to bring us joy, that are going to be able to give us something that we can hold on to, that we can run towards, instead of making all the decisions in our lives that are about running away from what we don't want. Now we get to go, okay, what are we running towards in our lives? And I love helping people kind of, when that switch goes on, it's like, whoa, okay, now I get that clear picture. Let's run towards that vision. So
I'm going to touch on that later about the second mountain, but boundaries really are a huge component to living a rich, fulfilling life. So would you mind sharing what your stance is on boundaries and how to implement, not only implement, but enforce them for success and happiness?
Yeah. You know, I put, there was this quote I actually put on my Instagram this morning. It says, "Walls keep everybody out. Boundaries teach people where the door is," by Mark Groves. Right. And I think, you know, when we talk about boundaries and when people haven't heard that term before, they think, yeah, I'm going to put this angry boundary up. You've been doing this to me for too long. And their context is very like defensive and fight. And that's not at all what a boundary is. I actually have a core workshop that is about putting up loving boundaries. And we talk about these. And I think boundaries are a place that are coming from a loving place. Brene Brown says that the most compassionate people are the ones with the strongest boundaries, right? And if we can really look at that and say, well, I can still love you, right? But at the same time, I'm going to put up this wall, this place of you can do this as long as, and that's about protecting my dreams and goals. You know, and I think, you know, we mentioned like some people have alcoholic loved ones, parents, whatever the case may be. You know, an example of that would be like, great, you know, we can't control if they drink or not, but you can lovingly say, I love you. But if you choose to drink, you can't be around the children, or you can't watch them. Right? Or I don't want to be in your presence when you drink, right? That has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with protecting your version of yourself, your place, your home, right? That's an emotional, say, thing of, yes, this is for me. This is my love for myself and my family. So,
yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I often tell my clients, well, actually, I tell anybody who will listen that what we think about, we bring about. What we focus on expands. Like attracts like. Hell, even thoughts become things, you know. Thank you, Mike Dooley. But I do this as a means of helping to shift their focus off of what they don't want and onto what they do. Because I want them to understand that that icky stuff should only be used as a tool to help us gain clarity. And I think it's imperative that we make the distinction of running towards what we do want and not away from what we don't want. You refer to this as the second mountain. Can you tell us what is that and how do you help others shift in that direction? Right.
Well, you know, the second mountain is actually that place in your life where you get to that is and I'll answer the first part of that question as well in just a moment. But a lot of people have spent their lives climbing this mountain to get on top, to buy the house, to make a certain amount of money, to get a prestigious title, to do all the things that they thought they needed to do. And then just to get there, you know, as I have, and then go, wow, this isn't what I thought. You know, I did it. I got there. And then they look at it and they go, well, what's next? You know, well, either a couple life circumstances take you there. Either you realize it for yourself that you're not happy and fulfilled and you start to climb towards something you want, or you get injured. There's a death, there's a sickness, a disease, something that the universe goes, hey, wake up. You know, it's time to move in a direction where you can be in service. I really believe that our lives are meant to be in service, and not to in a service type of what we traditionally think of service industry to be, but to really to provide a service to people, right? The true kings and queens are about being service to their kingdom, providing for their people. And I think we lost that somewhere along the way in leadership, right? So the second mountain is simply putting, what are my gifts? What are my passions? And how can I be in service and climb this second mountain in my life? Right. And I think it really allowing people to see that and run towards and ascend that next mountain where there is purpose, where there is passion, where there is a why behind it, and they're following their own hearts. When we get to do that, we climb this mountain of just beauty, and that's an amazing thing to watch people do. Now, cutting into, what you said about fear and all these things that a lot of people focus on, I think those things are there and they should be there, right? But they're not the ones making the decisions. And, somebody gave the example of if you get stung or hurt by something or somebody, or you fall down or there's a failure, you have the opportunity to take your hand off that hot stove, and you get burnt. Ow, okay, that hurts. I don't want to feel that again. I'm going to move my hand away from that stove. Right. But unfortunately, most people go, ow, and they hold their hand on that stove and they don't take it off because they think they need to suffer and suffer and suffer. And that's not the case. Take the messages, listen to it, feel the pain and go, no, I don't want to move in that direction. Here's the direction I want to move towards now. And that is my second mountain. And for some people, it could be their first, but for a lot, it might be a second, some even a third. So who knows? So
I believe that a big piece of the puzzle for all of us is actually getting out of our heads. So can you explain a little bit about the role and benefits of breath work and meditation, not only in your own life, but in what you teach your clients as well, and my listeners could benefit from?
Yeah. I think meditation is, I've been teaching it for years, and it's really a way to kind of come back home, is a way to tap into our deep well of wisdom. The studies that meditation has are vast, it's what it does for us and what it does to our nervous system and our cortisol levels, dropping our cortisol levels and lowering our stress and getting us clear on what we want is, there's no argument on how beautiful it is. Now, having said that, there's tons of different meditations we can do, thousands. Breath work is one of them, and what I teach is a holotropic breath work. It's a deep inhale, exhale, and that goes for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, depending on who I'm teaching it to. And what it does is allows us to really bring that energy into the body. And they say the issues are in the tissues. Right. So when we can breathe into the areas where we might hold stuck energy, that stuck energy comes out, and a lot of that comes out in emotions. Right. And those emotions that we haven't felt in a really long time get to be felt, get to be experienced. And the big part of being able to feel those emotions is owning those emotions and saying, this is a part of me. And being able to experience that scary part and go into that is such a beautiful thing to witness. Not only that, is in breath work, you can experience a very physical type of journey, so to speak, but it can also be a very metaphysical. You can connect to, the other side of the veil. A lot of people do. I mean, it's different for every single person. Every single time something different comes up. But it's a great way of tapping into the senses of the body, right? And that's what I think meditation is, just becoming very present with where you are right now. And when we're able to hear the breath, when we're able to feel the sensations, when we're able to visualize the sensations, smell even at times, feel like something in our bodies that are uncomfortable and being like, oh, that's okay. That's where we are able to kind of hone in and get a connection to ourselves. It's about peeling back the layers and taking off the masks and letting that soul that we were born with really shine through. And I think breath work and meditation allows us to do that over time, for sure. So,
yeah. And I think that that's something that, because we were never really taught the proper way to process our emotions, it really does have a tendency to get stuck in the body like that.
Oh, for sure.
So having a means of release that's a healthy way of release is, it's critical, really.
Yes. And they're even using this I'm going and teaching this to executives, CEOs. I'm running it at retreats. They're using it with Navy SEALs now and a lot of the military special ops. And why they're doing that is they're a lot, exactly what we talked about earlier. The cup isn't full, or there's stuff that is pushed down. And what the breath work will allow this to do is come up and be experienced and be surfaced so that they can come from a place of instincts. They can come from a place of self, right? Without having all of this excess on them, that we see today, unfortunately, a lot of the leadership positions where you look at it for those that are really connected and go, that's not authentic. That's not real. I want to see that open. I want to have those deep rooted, intimate conversations with people and know that someone's leading from the heart. And when we can do that, wow, that's an amazing thing. And this is just one of the tools that can help us get there for ourselves.
I agree. I actually have a vision of mine that I'm working towards as implementing something that it's a program to help to teach kids mindfulness and meditation. So if we can start there, Can you explain what mental fitness means to you?
Well, I kind of touched on it a little earlier. We look at our physical fitness in the world, right? And what does it take to get physically fit? You can't just go to the gym once a month and expect to see results or feel results, right? It's the same thing with our mental fitness. If we're going to show up to a meditation practice or breathwork practice or, working on navigating emotions, that's really important to do it on a daily basis, right? It doesn't have to be, a long period of time. It can be 10 minutes a day or whatever the case may be. But mental fitness is a term that was coined from a program I use with some of my clients called Positive Intelligence. And this whole program it's about a 6-week, they call it a 6-week kind of brain boot camp, right? Mental fitness boot camp that takes the practices of meditation and puts it in a very simplistic way for people that have that corporate speak or don't want to get too woo-woo, right? It kind of takes that and brings it into a moment. So for example, if you're in a meeting and you're kind of getting hijacked, right? Like, in other words, like there's that judgment coming in and everything's going into that survival left side of your brain, right? What would be great to do is go off into the other room and meditate for 5 minutes and do some breath work and then come back. And then all that gray matter from the left brain would be over into the right brain, where we call it the sage or the Jedi type of place within our brain, right? And then we could make a rational decision from that, right? That's what we love to do, but we can't, right? We're in the middle of a hardcore meeting and there's a lot of energy and stress going around. But what can you do, right? You can focus, like I said, in meditation. Meditation isn't about saying no thought or no mind. It's about bringing yourself to the senses and, simply staring off at something in the background and seeing colors and the textures for 2 minutes, rubbing your fingers together or your fingertips together and feeling the texture of that, taking a couple deep cleansing breaths and really paying attention to that breath coming in and out. All of that can take a very short period of time to hijack what is happening in you when you go into that survival place and bring it to the right side of the brain. And it's a whole program we go through. Yeah, it's on my website if people are interested and they don't want to go into like a deep spiritual, which I love to do anyway, but this is a little bit more kind of corporate setting mindset where it can be 10 minutes a day, 1 hour on the weekends, that really gets people into a place of, oh, I can control this. I can intercept this and bring it from that survival's place of judgment to the place in the right side of my brain, which is more sage and that place where we all can make better decisions from. And when we can do that, not only are we going to be exponentially happier, you can live 10 years longer. If you're in sales, if you're in that type of business, you can sell up to 30% more. This is all study based. So it's a really powerful program to use. But again, it just depends where you're at. I've had some super spiritual clients go, no, it's too rudimentary for me. But then I've brought it into a sales teams and they're like, I love this. I need more of this. And they've seen the sales go up within a few months in a quick period of time. So It just depends. Just depends what they're looking for. So.
And Chris, we can never have too many tools in our toolbox.
That's right.
I have so many different things that I use for clearing and healing and cord cutting.
Yep.
And
yeah.
So seriously,
that's right.
It's like,
and you know what? And I think that's what you and I get to do, is we get to use these tools and meet our people where they need to be met. Because if we go too far out there right away, they're going to run in the other direction. Yeah. But if they're like, or vice versa, we need to go into that deeper place and talk about the other side and this and that. But it's just a matter of speaking the language. And I think that's probably what our job is to be able to take what we know and be able to translate it in a way that people can fully understand it. So.
Yeah, hence the name of my podcast.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
I was like,
seriously,
wow, this looks intriguing.
My guidance was that it was named this way in order to catch the attention, if you will, or reach the people that I'm meant to reach, because that's the kind of jargon they would go for.
That's right. I love it. And that
well,
message is heard loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, and I have no problem saying it. So it's a non-issue. I'm going to just stop here for a second. If you don't mind, we're going to take a quick break, pay some bills, and we'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
Perhaps you've thought about starting your own podcast. I can tell you firsthand that starting a podcast was one of the best decisions I have ever made. But it can feel overwhelming if you don't know how to get started. Well, that's where Buzzsprout comes in. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch a professional podcast. In fact, it's so good, they've already helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout will get your podcast into every major podcasting platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You also get a great-looking podcast website, audio players you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and on and on. Plus, Buzzsprout publishes new blog posts, podcast episodes, and YouTube videos every week, so you can learn the ins and outs of podcasting from the people who eat, drink, and breathe it. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support our show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Ooh, Chris, you mentioned psychedelic journey work in your bio. Talk about that, please. Like, what is it and how will it help us?
Right. Well, I'll tell you my story first and how I got into it. I've had I live in LA. I've had a lot of friends that have experimented or done this journey work, so to speak. And I'm sure a lot of people have been hearing more and more about it as the research comes out. But for me, when I first did it, and I actually was able to do it with my wife, I sat in a backyard in Venice, California, and I was just like, what just happened to me? It was this expansive, heart-opening connection to myself, to my wife, to everybody that was around me, to the trees, to the earth. It took my vision and my whole soul and just opened it to a place of pure expansion. I felt so small, but yet I felt so connected and so meaningful at the same time. So that was the feeling. But the work that comes with that is a lot of understanding of who you are and that programming, and I'll give you just one example. Was able to see my father, for him as a little boy, and feel compassion for him and the childhood he went through and the experience he had. And I was able to cure that trigger that I had growing up in just one session and being able to feel that. It was just like, wow, to see, why I do certain things or had done certain things in my life. The medicine has an intelligence to it that is so loving and careful on how it presents it, but it shows you who you are and a lot of the times what you're meant to do over time, right? So, it's been about 8 or 9 years or so since we started this, and it's been this journey every single time for us. The growth we get as a couple has brought our marriage from a regular marriage to a spiritual partnership, that we know our souls are here to help us grow on a different level. And so now that I'm able to not only experience this for myself, but work with it with different clients and see, like I said, the masks and the transformation that I'm able to see with them has just been really, really profound. And now with the research out, Johns Hopkins University and what's happening in a lot of these other maps, they're showing PTSD that they're able to clear, depression that they're able to see. 70% of people that maybe 70% or more that have done some of these journeys are actually reporting it being one of the most profound experiences of their life. So yeah, there's a lot that comes up, and I could talk about this all day long, but it's been very cathartic, healing, expansive, and just really has brought me into a deeper level of knowing myself. So
wow, I've heard very similar stories from many people. I have not had, now I did all kinds of shit when I was a teenager, but it wasn't like that. So I've never actually had an experience like that, but I have heard so many wonderful things, and they all say essentially the same thing, especially the expansive part. That was like a, really key factor for everybody.
And you can't even put it into words a lot of times, like a lot of the stuff that shows up isn't necessarily something you have the words for, and that's why, and I must say, it's so important not only to have the right set and setting. It's one thing to get a hold of them, right? Whatever that is, your choice of psilocybin, DMT, whatever, sassafras. It's another thing to be responsible and hold it in a very sacred way, right? Michael Pollan has an amazing book out, How to Change Your Mind. He experimented with it and he goes into depth about it. But the set and setting is essential for you to have a really great experience, because a lot of the things that happen, it brings up trauma. It brings up, people have ego deaths, so to speak. There's a lot of losing self or ego that can be extremely scary for people. So having that guide or whoever you choose to do it with that you trust, that can really ask you the right questions and spend some time with you prior to you doing any of this work is really essential. There's different medications you got to make sure you're not mixing with these things. So it's not for everybody, but if it's something that you're looking to do, just be very mindful and cautious and make sure that you do your research and that set and setting is set for you. That person leading it should be holding a really sacred container for you. And then on the flip side, help you integrate what you got, because a lot of people do this work and it's like, okay, I got this and had this amazing experience. Now what? Well, let's teach you how to integrate it into your life so that your life actually starts to move in the direction you want it to. It's not just about having experience, it's about putting it into action now. So, and I think a lot of experience facilitators shamans, whoever you choose to do it with, will be able to guide you in that direction and how to take that experience and go, here you go. That was beautiful. Now let's shift your world. So
is this something that you and your wife do? You just do this yourself, or are you actually a facilitator?
We have done it for 8 or 9 years. And so there has been, we do it with different groups and different people that we're really close with, but there's been a lot of experience with it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So I'm going to shift gears for a second. You just mentioned that you have done this with your wife and that it's really shifted and changed the relationship that you have. So you've got 2 great kids. You have a strong marriage of more than 16 years. And I think that most of us desire a true spiritual partnership. So from your experience, what is the key to achieving that? I mean, besides taking a psychedelic journey.
Yeah, no. That wasn't, we had a great relationship before. Like just to put it into context, the first couple of years that we were together, it was just like this beautiful, blissful, like kinship that we had. It was just like, I wanted to be around her. She wanted to be around me. And it was easy. I think a lot of people, they get into relationships, and I'm I do work with couples and relationships quite a bit, but I wouldn't say I'm a relationship therapist or anything like that. I'm more of a coach to help them see certain things. But, when people get into relationships at first and it's like trigger, and there's, they're in therapy in the first 3 months, then, you might want to reevaluate that. But, we had a great first few years and we still do. And then we had kids come along and, things got a little bit more complicated, but still extremely beautiful. But you're asking, what is the key? There's a lot of different keys, but I'd say one of the main ones is communication, right? There is nothing we don't talk about, right? And I've worked with a lot of men. I've been in a men's organization 14 years, working with all sorts of men from all walks of life and helping them with their careers and relationships, and what we get to do as men, how we show up and hold that space for the feminine, so to speak. It is about really communicating, but doing it from a place of ownership, right? Not victimizing it, not pointing the fingers and saying, you did this to me. We're all responsible for each other, right? And when we can look at ourselves in the mirror and go, well, how did I show up there? What was my true context? Even though I said these words, right? Helping them understand how you best communicate, or how best you hear things, or or asking the questions on how she best receives things, right? When we can have that dialogue, if we get in tiffs, in which we have many, many times, it's being able to go back and go, when we both are calm, and go, well, what was that about? Why did that happen? What did you say? What did I say? Let's hear each other from a different angle, right? And it's that constant work of being willing to kind of show up and go, I'm there no matter what. Let's discuss it. Let's figure this out. Let's keep growing together. And when we can do that, I think there's a trust and there's a real power that comes from that relationship, because we know we're both got each other's backs and we're in this for the long haul. So
Personally, I think communication is the key. I mean, it really, because if you can actually have a conversation like that, especially in the aftermath, and say, hey, what the hell just happened? Let's take a look at this.
Yeah. And it transfers to the kids too, not to say that, we're perfect parents, but being able to kind of go, hey, my daughter brought me to a place of, where I had to use the daddy voice, right? Okay, that happens. Or the same thing with my son, who's 16 now, right? And just getting upset, but being able to go back to them, both of them, and say, okay, let's talk about what happened. Okay, what, I know I shouldn't have, or I did raise my voice, or whatever the case may be, but let's figure out why. Let me tell you how I misstepped there, what I could have done better first, right? Sure. And then what could you have done better at the same time? So it's the lessons that come from it. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to make our mistakes, but go back and say, what can we extract? What can we unleash from this? And I think if we're constantly looking at that and going back into the mirror and going, okay, let me look at myself first. What did I do? How did I show up? Right. It's not going, well, if she didn't do this, then taking those breaths, doing a little breath work, looking in the mirror, say, what could I have done better first? Then going back into the relationships and saying, now let's discuss this.
Right. We are social creatures. We are not meant to be alone. And relationships, our whole existence is about relationship to ourselves, to each other, to the earth. So what do you believe relationships are here to actually teach us?
Oh, they're everything. I mean, they're triggers, our triggers, when you see a trigger that comes up in yourself, thank it, right? That trigger is there to teach you. Yeah. And I'll give you just a quick example. I was working with a with a client, and she was having some marital issues with her husband. And he's like, he just makes me so angry and da, 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 da. Okay, well, what is that? When he tries to make the decisions and control things, then I just blow. I go, okay, let's take a breath for a minute. And when else did that happen in your life? Right. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, well, how old were you when that happened? When you had that same emotion, the same feeling come up? She's like, well, I was 4. I go, well, what happened? Well, my stepbrothers tried to do the same thing. They controlled me and did it. And I go, what did you do? She goes, oh, well, eventually I retreated because I could never get my way. And I go, so you carried that all the way through your teens? And I go, were there other people that you dealt with that brought this up? He goes, yeah. And what did you do? Well, either I just got them out of my lives, or I just got angry with them, or whatever. I was in some relationship, I broke up with them. And I go, do you see the patterning that's happening here? Your triggers from that unresolved issue when you were 4 is now being present with your husband, right? He didn't do it. He showed you who he was, right? You married him for who he was. But now these triggers are coming up and you're getting angry. What's beneath the anger? Well, sadness, upset, right? You were scared. So it's really getting to that place within yourself and going, oh, it's my trigger. It's not what he's doing or she's doing. It's my trigger. And you get to work on that trigger. And the beauty of that trigger is that it never goes away. I know people are like, what? Are you kidding me? It doesn't. What happens is it actually gets softer, because every time it comes around, it's like, oh, I see you now. And when you see it, that's when it loses power. Oh, I see it again. Oh, a little less power. I see it again. A little less power, a little less power. And then it becomes a whisper, but it doesn't go away, and it shouldn't go away, because it's always going to be there to teach you so that eventually you can be in service and show that to somebody else. And I think that's our whole way of being. It's the whole beautiful loop, is when we own our stories and we're able to tell those stories from an ownership position, that gives other people permission to heal, other people permission to see. And our stories are so amazing. We can talk concepts all day long, but when you can tell your story, that hits people in a completely different side of their brain and a completely different depth of their heart. So it's about learning and earning and loving our stories and loving ourselves for who we are and how we get brought up. And we can do that. It's just the world becomes magical.
It really does. And I love the fact that you said that it doesn't go away. It just gets softer, because that is exactly how it feels each time. Because I mean, I've been doing this work for many, many years, and as peeling back the layers, it literally is that, as it just gets softer. And that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
So you work as a conscious performance coach and a mind-body instructor. Can you explain what those entail? Like, what does that even mean? What do they even mean?
I started, I did a lot of work. I had a business degree. I got a business degree. I did I have to work at a corporation type of thing. I did that, worked for many different corporations. But my whole thing was about being a coach, So I started in the fitness industry, 25 years ago. I eventually became a presenter. So I went around the world and traveled, certified thousands of instructors, developed my own content, worked for different companies. So that was the start. What I realized as I got into this and as I developed my own programming and own workshops and weekend retreats and all this, is that my passion was at the depth of people. I knew how to help people lose weight. I knew how to, help people cross a finish line for an Ironman or a marathon or whatever the case may be. That became pretty easy to me to learn those concepts. But I wanted people to learn the journey of it all, right? The in-depth journey of themselves and why they were doing what they were doing. Because I think a lot of people miss that, right? It's not about just losing 10 or 20 pounds or crossing a finish line. It is about the why and falling in love with the journey. And so as I, worked with people on a physical level, right, I learned the concepts of meditation, breath work, teach a class called Inner Cycle. I'm a yoga instructor. So it's using that device at a heightened state, whatever that tool is, to really impart some wisdom, so to speak. It's not that I'm forcing it on. I'm asking a lot of questions. If you have taken a yoga class before, they ask questions, they make suggestions. And that's why I love to coach. And so as it came about, it came into, I get to work with people that show up just for a physical activity, but now I get to bring this into different organizations. Companies will have me come in and work with their sales teams to get them to perform at a better level for themselves. So we look at all areas of their life right now. So I am a performance coach now, right? So I do all areas, all those areas I mentioned, the 5 areas of spirituality, financial, the relationship with money, personal relationships with yourselves and others, professional, what's your professional relationship, and then health and wellness or fitness, mind, body. And so conscious is just being present with what you're doing, knowing that you're doing it for a reason, because we all know people that have embarked on a physical journey that are doing it and they're just putting their head down, they're grinding through it, and they're doing it or they're running away from some emotions because they're working out all the time, right? As opposed to some people that might be running away from what might be coming up is to not do anything, right? So it's the same thing. It's dealing with people on their level and getting them to kind of go, what is your purpose? What are the tools that Laurie and I get to use for you to become a better version of you? So that's where that whole aspect came from. Now it's just a snapshot of my journey. So
I think that you have to look at all of it. You have to incorporate every part. Otherwise, you're not going to get the lasting results that you want if you don't pick it apart and actually see all of those pieces.
Yeah.
So,
and I had to become really clear with that too, just to piggyback on what you just said. The early days when I defined, people used to come in and I used to teach like a cycling class, and they go, "Oh, I want you to train me." And I go, "Okay." And I get on the phone and have that conversation. And next thing you know, they're in tears on some of the questions that I asked them, but they thought they were calling to get me to be a personal trainer for them. But what I had to do at that point is be much clearer on what I do and the role that I play in their world. Yeah. Are we going to do exercises together? Sure. Of course, we might go on a grueling hike or something like that, but you're getting much more than just lifting some weights or going for a run type of coach here. So.
Yeah, it really does have to be that.
Mm-hmm.
And to have somebody in your corner that can hold space for you and actually allow you to express what's going on in those different areas of your life is essential, because oftentimes we do not have people in our lives that are open to receiving that, to talking about all of that. So for you to hold that space for them so that they can do the work that they need to do to clean that shit up is amazing.
It's a space holding thing. And that's what I think a lot of people are like, coaches are good. I'm going to have this motivational speaker talking to me all the time. And that's not what a coach is. A coach is a space holder, a suggester, right? As someone who can ask questions and get a hit of, ooh, that didn't feel right. What's behind that? It's really asking the hard questions and going, hey, if you're going to work with, I'm sure you do the same thing, but if you're going to work with me, this isn't going to be an easy journey, right? We're going to high five and have fun, and I'm going to share your wins, but I'm also going to, be there when it gets really scary, and hold that space for you, because that's where the depth and that's where the gold is in the middle of that, when that stuff surfaces and you get to kind of have the courage to go in there. Right? Not run away from it, but run into it. That's where the joy and the gold is. So,
yeah. And I don't shy away from calling someone on their bullshit either. So, sometimes you have to.
You don't seem it.
Really?
I wouldn't say, look at your name of your podcast. Yeah. I can see that now.
So. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So, honestly, the premise of this podcast really is to help people wake up, to remember the fact that we are all connected to everyone, everything, so that we shift the way that we're showing up in the world, right? Yeah, so with that in mind, and I do ask this of everybody, based on your experiences and the current areas of your own expertise, what one thing would you recommend to someone to help them wake the fuck up?
Mm. I think I said it earlier, but it's really going into your stories, the messy ones that you don't wish upon anybody in your life, the scariest ones that you went through, and figuring out the way, and you don't have to do this alone, but how to change perspective on those so that you can really own that aspect of you, right? It's embracing everything that happened for you and extracting the lessons and going, why did this happen? Using those gifts that came from that and then bringing it and putting it back out to the world.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, really.
Mm.
This has been such a wonderful conversation, Chris, and I'm going to have this information up in the show notes. But for somebody who would actually like to find out more about what you're doing or work with you directly, how would they go about getting in touch with you?
Great. Just on my website, chrisplourde.com, and they actually have a free breathwork class. If somebody wants to try that, they can get that. A discovery call if we just want to have a conversation to see if we're a right fit for coaching. Or Instagram is the best way. Coach Chris Plourde at Coach Chris Plourde. So
nice. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it. We covered a lot today. I just really thank you for having me on and taking the time. So
it was my pleasure. I'm really grateful to connect with you. And I want to say thanks to everybody who tuned in today. As always, I'm grateful for your presence. And I'll see you all back here next Sunday with another episode as we continue to wake the fuck up.